Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to all of you. Depends where you are in the part of the world. I greet you in the name of our Most High. Today, I'm actually going to two chapters for the commandments. Last session I have for the commandments, laws and statutes was in Exodus chapter 20, which is the 10 commandments, and also Exodus chapter 21. So today we're gonna go over chapter 22 and 23 if I have the time. I'm trying to keep it short because some of you don't, you kind of lose attention once video past 30 and 40 minutes. So I'm gonna do my best to go through both chapters. Remember, the commandments, laws, and statutes is a daily practice. We need to know it. That's why it says to put it on your doorpost, at your gate. You recite it and remember it when you're walking by the way, when you're sitting down, eating dinner or lunch, what have you. You teach it to your children. So these are the things we need to practice on a daily basis. And I mean every day, every moment in your life, you need to remember these things. And I will also remind you, remember, those are children of Yashar'el, those who are scattered to the four corners of the earth. Remember, you are not in your land. So there are certain laws, certain commandments that are out of your hands as far as the judicial system. So certain things, you just gotta, you have no control of that, another word. But the others you do have control of. You know what to do, what not to do. That's what the commandments, laws, and statutes of the Torah is all about. The do's and don'ts in order to remain in the Most High's presence, our Father in heaven. And as I said in the previous video, I'm going to start using Sunini Nanini. But this is what the commandment is all about. Is to remind you, the reason you put your fringes is so it can remind you of the commandments. The reason you put it on your door so you can see it before you leave the door, and recite it so you can remember the do's and don'ts. And when you're coming back, you see it in your posts, in your gates, and when you're going in, it reminds you of the things that you should or should not be doing. So we're going to start. Again, this is the second part of the commandments, laws, and statutes that YAHUAH, so Nini Nanini, or our Father in heaven, I'm going to use our Heavenly Father, gave to Moshe for the children of Yashar'el with instructions what to do and not to do. So let's say if you were in America, for instance, let's say if the government were to keep these laws and commandments and statutes, so which they would be following this in accordance with the commandments. Now, since they don't know the commandments, they reject the commandments, they have their own laws, their own judicial. So therefore, certain things that will happen here, you have no control of. But as for you who knows what to do, not to do, if any of these that I'm going to mention here, you're not supposed to steal. That's a part of the commandments. Thou shalt not steal. So you wouldn't be stealing anybody's oxes or whatever it is. You would not be stealing. But some of the thing, if you're going to do play role, if it was in you for that instance, that happened to you, what to do, to do the right thing. So in Exodus chapter 22, we're going to start in verse 1, and it reads, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Now, and there are some stories actually in America which are true, and like I say, the judicial system, you have attorneys who, most of the attorneys, they're wicked, and they represent the wicked. They know the act of the person, but yet they still choose to represent that person and tell them to say that they are not guilty, knowing that they are guilty. I remember this certain individual that a thief broke in his house, and he defended himself and actually harmed that thief. And guess who went to jail? And he has to pay for that thief. It's the homeowners, when the thief had no business being in the house. So that's why I say certain things that are out of your hands and you have no control of. That's why you have to use the commandments with discretions. And if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox. So in a case like this, what you be doing is you will report the thief or the theft to the police. Now what they do from there is out of your hands, because you cannot force or make that thief pays you back, because that person is already out of sight. Anybody who steals actually don't know the commandments, and as for Satan, if you read in Jubilees chapter 10, I think I did do a revision on that. Satan is able with his legions to control the hearts of men's minds. So they make you do things that are outside of the commandments, and when they control your mind, whatever evil that you do, and you think it is good. So this is what's happening. So therefore, when somebody goes to your farm or go in your house and stole something they have no business taking, this person, for instance, that it says in verse 1, if somebody stole 1 ox, it has to pay back 5 for it. So if he kills it and sell it, he has to return 5 oxen for that 1 and 4 sheep for that 1. That's the law. That's the commandments, how it's supposed to happen. If you were in a city or in states where the commandments, laws, and statutes is to apply it, so the judge in that city will make that person pay for those ox or sheep, or they'll go to jail. Whatever the judge, which would be the Levites, chose for that guilty person to do. If that person broke into your house, you struck that person, because he has no business being in there, and that person died, the blood is not in your hand. There's no guilt to be found in your hand. Let me read it again, verse 2. If the thief is found breaking in, and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Now verse 3, it says that if the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. Okay? And verse 4 say, if the theft is certainly found alive in his hand, whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall restore double. And let's say somebody stole your car. It happens a lot. Or somebody took your credit card, they stole your money. So they have to restore double of what been stolen. That is the law of the Torah. That's how it's supposed to be. So we're going to go to verse 5. It says, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be gazed, and lets loose his animal, and it feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. So let's say you're a farmer and you have your corns, your field, and some other individual, your neighbors, let loose their animals or goats and go ahead and ate up all your crops. He is supposed to restore that from his and return it to you, all the goods that his animals destroyed. Again, this is how it's supposed to happen, and by the law. And like I said, what happened if you report it, since the people now or states, they have their own judicial, they have their own law, they don't follow the commandments. Whatever they do from there, whatever they ask them to pay, this is how you're gonna have to go about it. If the law in the state or country that you're on, and whatever they told him to do or restore, then you're just gonna have to go with that. Okay? Because they do not follow the Torah. And verse 6 says, if fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that stacked grain, standing grain, and the field is consumed, he whom kindled the fire shall surely make restitution for it. So again, this is in the hands of the police or the government who controls your state wherever you are. But if it was, let's say, a state where the commandments, laws, and statutes, it would go accordingly to the Torah. And verse 7, it says, if a man delivers to his neighbor money or articles to keep, and it is stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double, just like in the beginning, And verse 8, it says, if the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought to the judges to see whether he has put his hand into his neighbor's good. Meaning, let's say your neighbor, you say, give $500 to your neighbor to hold for you, or some things that's precious to you, say, hold that for me, or I'm going away, then you keep an eye for me. Let's say you come back and your neighbor is telling you that, oh, by the way, somebody broke into my house and they stolen what you have given me, and now that person will be brought to the judge. Now they will investigate to make sure that your neighbor is not the one who's stolen your articles or whatever you've given him to hold for you and sold it and kept the money. Now once they found that he's not involved and they catch the thief, then the thief has to pay double of what was stolen from him to return to you. Nonetheless, if they found that it was your neighbors that had taken it, then he has to repay back the goods that was stolen that he stole from you, that you have have in his house. This is how it's supposed to go. Okay, that's the commandments. That's the Torah for things that you let your neighbor hold for you. Now, if it's you in the case that somebody gave you something precious to hold, they're not there. If you lose that thing, or just say somebody broke into your house, they taken it, you cannot lie. You just tell them the truth. You know what I'm saying? So if the person feel like you're not telling the truth, they want to take you to the judge, so be it. But you have to tell the truth. If you took that thing, you have to repay it back. That's how it goes, because you have to do what is righteous. Okay? And verse 9, it says, for any kind of trespass, whether it concerns an ox, a donkey, a sheep, or clothing, or for any kinds of lost things which another claims to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges. It's just like they go to court, okay? And whomever the judges condemn shall pay double of his neighbor. And like I say, again, in the court, when the matter goes to the court, then you file the complaint, what have you. Whatever the judge, says, that's what has to go, okay? And verse 10, it says, and if a man deliver to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or sheep and any animals to keep, and it dies, it hurt, or driven away, no one seen it, verse 11, then an oath of Elohim shall be between them both, which means they're gonna have an oath that he has not put his hand in his neighbor's goods, meaning he did not literally hurt that animal, or that the animal purposely or carelessly run away, or whatever happened to that animal, he did not do it out of animosity or wickedness. He didn't do it purposely. That's all this is saying there. And the owner of it shall accept that, because they made an oath, which means, in other words, you're swearing that I have nothing to do with it. Like I said, that's somebody who's keeping the commandments. You shall not lie. If you had something to do, that's the time you come forward and say, okay, it was my fault, my carelessness, and I did it. So you have to restore what was lost to your neighbor. But according to someone who's not keeping the Torah, it's possible people make an oath all the time and they still lie. But you shouldn't be lying, okay? And like it says, and he shall not make it good because you took an oath. Verse 12, it says, but if in fact it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to the owner of it, okay? If it is torn to pieces by the beast, then he shall bring it as an evidence, bring the dead animal, and he shall not make it good what was torn. Which means a beast, got in, there's a bear, got into the yard and killed that animal, and we still have the dead animal. This is his evidence. You see, look, I didn't do anything about it, another animal killed it. So that is not his fault. But if somebody by careless, you let it stole or whatever it is happen, if it was stolen, then you just have to restore whatever it is back to the owner, because they entrusted you to help hold that animals for them. Okay, in verse 14 it says, and if a man borrows anything from his neighbor and it becomes injured or die, the owner of it not being with it, he shall surely make it good. In verse 15, if its owner was with it, he shall not make it good, for it was hired. It came for its hired. Okay, and this is very clear, instructions. Is not hard. You read it, it's something that's very basic that you should understand. And we're gonna jump to verse 16. It's about morals and the ceremonial principles. So in verse 16 it says, if a man entice a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall surely pay the bride price for her to be his wife. And if her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money according to the bride price of a virgin. This is how it was back in the days with the children of Yashar'el. If someone done that, this is what would happen. So he would pay the price to have a big ceremony for a wedding. Okay, and it will marry the young lady as well. Okay, so if the father is saying, no, I don't want you to marry my daughter, he's still going to have to pay the price, and he will keep his daughter because he doesn't want that man to marry his daughter. Maybe he knows the man has some bad habits, he doesn't want him in the family, whatever. So that's how it used to be. And how it goes these days, we're raised wrong and outside the commandments. There's no such things nowadays, and if somebody enticed a young woman, slip with the person, is just not a big deal anymore. So we're living in iniquity, and in sins, sins is elevated. It's a good thing. It's not, nobody cares anymore about these things. So that's why you who's keeping the commandments as a young lady, you're not supposed to give your body to any man unless you're married. Okay, so this is the commandments for a virgin, who lives in their parents' house. So no matter how bad the person entices you, you have to refrain yourself. No, you're not supposed to have sex before marriage. But like I said, discretions is in the modern day we're living in. So it's okay, you find young children having boyfriend and girlfriend starting at the age of 12. Some of them start having sex at the age 12, even 11 and 10 as well. Is it even earlier than that? You find children get involved in this practice because it's okay now. It's a modern day, it's the norm. It is not a big deal anymore to do that. You don't really find any more virgin, because what happened, once a young lady in the state, like I said, the commandment is practiced. If a man went to ask for you as a young lady that lives in their father's house, if after you married, you are found not to be a virgin, you get stoned to death, so that sin does not continue. Like I say, that was the fear that was inserted to young women, that they're not supposed to be sleeping around like a whore with men that is not their husband. Unless you're married, you have no business having sex with any other men, or even the man to you. Save yourself for that one woman. You don't go around humping any woman in the skirts that you see. So this was the instructions that was giving for the children of Yashar'el, or any stranger who attached himself to the Most High. These are the commandments they had to keep. You have a young lady, make sure that the young lady is keeping herself until she's married. A man as well, You keep yourself until you're ready for marriage. You don't be a whore jumping here and there with any woman that you see. So that was the commandment. Like I said, modern day is different, but remember, you are in the world, but you are not part of the world. That's why if you're keeping the commandments, laws, and statutes, these must apply to you. That's why you have to teach it to your children so they know that it is a sin and you're not supposed to do such things because it's punishable. Although, you know, there was nobody going to be stoning anybody. Like I say, it's modern day. It's a norm. It's okay for people to do nowadays. You know, like I said, discretions, you know, but in certain part of the country, of the world, you know, these things are happening. They do stone, you know, people in certain area, part of the world, but it depends where you live. You know, some of the laws are strict. Like I say, people are loose nowadays. Some of the commandments they keep, but some they don't keep. So, like I say again, it's discretion. So you raise your children, your young women, to keep themselves until they are married. To wait until they're married. If they're in the teen, they're 18, you know, they feel like they can wait. It's better you married them instead of them going out sleeping with this man. You know, when they think they're in love with this young boy and the young boy just wanted to sleep with them, and after he slept with them, he just walked away. So this young lady might be pregnant and a single mom, and that's why you find a lot of single mothers, or unless that child or that person was raped, it's a different story. But that's why you find a lot of single mom and a lot of, you know, I would say about 98. I'll put 95% of women or young women are not virgin anymore, or men, they'll keep their virginity because they go hopping around, you know, act like whores, sleeping with people without being married and choosing a wife, or the woman, you know, have a husband. So that's the norm for the modern days. That's why I teach your children the commandments, insert that fear in them so they can live a clean life and can be in the presence of the Most High. If you're living that kind of lifestyle, you know, like I said, you don't find too many virgins. But if you were in the world or whatever Christian, because they still do it in Christian church, people don't stay virgin. They have boyfriend here, boyfriend there, what have you. When the date here, there, it happens. But you know, if you come to the truth, that you know the truth, what had happened, that you know you have you single mom, or let's say you now don't have any children, but yet you've been through several men. Now you know this is the time for you to stop. You wait until you find that man, or that man come for you with YAHUAH. You pray to the Most High, you know, to send you the man that's keeping the commandments, laws, and statutes that will marry you, so that you can live your life righteously. But you know, you wait for that man to come in your life, or find that man, and always make sure that person is keeping the commandments. Because if you get somebody that does not keep the commandments, it's gonna be, you know, a heartache for you, because you're trying to keep the commandments and he's not trying to keep the commandments. So you have to be an equally yoke. Okay, so put that in your thoughts. All right, so we're gonna go to verse 18. It says, you shall not permit a sorcerer to live. So like I say, modern day, it's people are proud to be a witch. They're everywhere, practice sorceries, you know. You know, it's a lot of things. Like I say, modern day people do that. And back in the days, because it's wickedness, is, you know, it's evil spirit, it is Satan. You know, all these things have to either connect with Satan. All the sorceries, you know, witchcraft, all this, you know, you do not partake in that at all. So which means back in the days, when the time of Yashar'el, they were together keeping the commandments, anyone like sword, they will stone them to death. Okay, they will not be around, you know, in that city or state where the Yashar'el, they would have to escape, leave the country, go somewhere else with practice, but they will not allow them to be there. But like I say, witchcraft, you know, it's practiced everywhere, and it's okay. It's modern day, people does that. Again, with discretion. You don't go out killing witches, you know, in your own hands. Remember, you're living in a world now where the commandments is rejected. Everything you have to do, you have to use discretions and, you know, discernment, you know, and you have to know your boundaries, certain commandments you have to keep, and it's not you that go in and be the law keeper, you know, I mean, not the law keeper, but those who are going to go in and execute such things. That's for the government. Even the government, you know, they practice witchcraft. So there you are. You cannot go around and trying to kill sorcerers or people who's practicing witchcraft because you're trying to keep the commandments. Each man his own. In other words, you keep the commandments for yourself. That's why you separate yourselves. You be a set apart. Okay, you stay away. You don't befriend anybody who's practicing such things. Okay, so you live in the world, you're not part of the world. So you live a life that is set apart, keeping the commandments for yourself. Use discernment and discretion. Verse 19, it says, whosoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. Again, bestiality. And not too long ago, it's just so sad. You see this young lady, she's actually on TikTok. You know, was it TikTok, one of the social media? She was explaining how sex with a dog is the best sex. Now, this is abomination, and this young lady should be put to death with that animal. This is the Torah, not me. You're reading it. Whoever lies within animals shall surely be put to death. But modern day, they reject the Torah. So whoever is doing that, because she knows, she was calling out states, she knows that you're allowed to sleep with your dog. And people, I've seen this lady on YouTube, you know, she had a wedding with her dog, and actually people actually attended. One of the reverend was doing the wedding. All these people, you know, should be put to death. But like I said, this is the Torah, and use discretion and discernment. These things are abomination, and this is what's been practiced just as the day of Noah. So remember, that's why the Elohim say he's coming as a thief in the night. So that's why you have to be careful. You have to be set apart. Some of the things you have to watch and pray and keep the commandments. That you have to remember. And these things you're supposed to go over them on a daily basis. Teach it to your children. So like I say, you don't take the law or matters to your own hands. You set yourself apart. You choose your friends wisely. Those who are in the commandments, laws, and statutes, that's who you attach yourself with. Otherwise, anybody who's not in the commandments, you have to give them, you know, set apart. All right, and that's why, and I will bring that to say that, you know, if you attach yourself to Elohim above your Father in heaven, you say, I want to serve you, I want to keep your commandments and laws and statutes, it will be beneficial if you can start your own business. However, if you can work at home, you know, because a lot of things, certain companies are doing wickedness, you don't want to partake in these things. So if you can open your own business, you know, you're in control, you're not partaking with other people, you know what you're doing, and you can take those time off for the feast days, you know, to serve your Elohim the way you're supposed to do. That will be beneficial for you. And I've seen people who've gone, they say, in the bush, they live their life away from everybody else. You know, they totally set apart. Okay, they call it, there's a name they call it, and I can't remember, but that will be beneficial. Again, you don't take the law into your own hands. Remember, there is a government in place. Although they reject the commandments, you let them take that to their own hands, but it's not up to you to go and do any killing, anything. Like I said, discretion and discernment, and you keep the commandment for yourself. You set yourself apart. Watch your friends, who is your friend, or who you getting involved with, who you marrying with, and what you're doing. Okay, like it says, whosoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. So you make sure yourself you do not sleep with any animals, because it's an abomination. Okay, although other people are doing it, that doesn't mean it's right. Although they approve it in certain places, that doesn't mean it's right. That's why the commandments is not done away with. It's still important. These things you need to know. You need to teach it to your children, and even your children, it's beneficial to keep them homeschool so they don't partake with other students, because you don't know what, there's a lot of wicked spirit flying, and you have to remember those spirits, Satan's spirit, they take over most of those children, the heart of the mind. You know, they control them. Certain things you find a 5-year-old doing nowadays, you know, it baffling you. So that's why your children, you have to keep them set apart so they can follow the feast days and keep the commandments. You teach it to them. Okay, you set yourself apart in your children as well, and make sure they know these things and the consequences. Don't just tell your children don't do that, but you're not telling them, showing them the verse, telling them why they're not supposed to do it. Okay, so you have to make sure you explain it properly to your children so they know to walk in the fear of Elohim. And always pray that they have the zeal for the covenant of the forefathers, the Torah, that they have it and keep it. So in verse 20 it says, he who sacrifices to any gods except to Elohim, Sonini Nanini, he shall be utterly be destroyed. Remember, he is our Father in heaven, is a jealous Elohim. That's why the children of Yashar'el, if you're not a descendant, if you're not a Yashar'el, even if you're a stranger meaning that you're not a descendant or of the children of Yashar'el, meaning you're not part of the descendant of YAHUSHA HAMASHIACH and Yashar'el. So if you attach yourself to Elohim, you're keeping the commandments, you're just like one of them. Okay, so which means strangers, whether you're strangers or not, you're the children of Elohim. You do not sacrifice to God, to any other gods, but you worship Elohim alone. He is a jealous Elohim, and that's why the children of Yashar'el have been gone to captivities. That's their history. Every time they go serve another god, the Molech especially, it says do not give sacrifice of your children to Molech. The Baal, they used to sacrifice to these animals, the sun god. They used to do these things, and that's why they've gone to captivities. And like read Revelation, Deuteronomy chapter 28, the punishment. That's why they scattered right now, not in their own land, and Jerusalem is no longer there, and that was in the prophecy. So remember, you do not worship any other Elohim. Jesus is another Elohim. Okay, you do not do service for him because he is an idol, and I know a lot of you probably have some issues with that, but you just got to do your research and seek YAHUAH for your Sonini Nanini, or the Most High for yourself. Okay, say he who sacrifices to any gods. You have that thing they call voodoo, which the children of Israel and Haiti, and not only Haiti, Jamaica, a lot of places, even here too, they do sacrifices to other gods. You do not partake in that. That's why you have to be a set apart. Otherwise you will be destroyed, because he's a jealous Elohim. He alone you're supposed to do sacrifice, which is sacrifices of praise. You no longer kill any animals, what have you. Okay, and as I always say, you shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were a stranger in the land of Egypt or Mizraim. So a stranger, like I was explaining before, anyone who does not have the lineage or a descendant of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yashar'el, or what you call a Shemite, you're not part of that. Let's say, Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And so, Ham, which is a black nation, and so was Japheth, but something happened. You have to look for the history that they become partial, become white, what you call albinos, from that, and now they have the different races, what have you. I'm not gonna get into that. That's something for you need to research about it. And so we will consider anyone that's come from Ham or Japheth, they are stranger to the Shem or Shemites, which the Shemites are the descendant of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yashar'el, is Jacob. Okay, so you will consider a stranger. For example, when the children of Yashar'el, Israel, were leaving Egypt, remember there are some Egyptians, which is from the descendant of Ham, who went with them as well to the desert. They're what you call a stranger. He said you're not supposed to mistreat a stranger because you yourself was a stranger yourself. It's just anybody who's not a descendant or not part of the children that you consider as a stranger. And it's telling you you're not supposed to mistreat one because you yourself were a stranger. And for the children of Yashar'el nowadays, they are strangers in a strange land, like it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28. You're gonna go to a land of strangeness, because strange language that your father never known, a strange God you're gonna serve that your father never known. So right now, our children of Yashar'el are stranger in a strange land. They're not in the land where they're supposed to be. They're in the land of captivity. So with yourself, if you were to say you're back in your own land, and when a stranger comes to you, you don't treat them bad, except If that person is coming to you with a different God, is telling you you have to worship a different God, now that's a different story. You know what I'm saying? Now that person, you know, according to the Torah, you're supposed to be killing that person. Like I said, don't take matters to your own hands. Don't say, I said it's in the Torah, but you have to go according to the law of the country that you're living. You do not take matters to your own hand, because that country you are right now, mostly the world now, reject the Torah, you know, out of ignorance. They reject it, they don't keep it, they do not practice that. So to continue, you do not mistreat a stranger, but that doesn't mean that you will partake, eat, drink with a stranger if they're not keeping the Torah, whether they're stranger or not. Even if it's a children of Yashar'el, a descendant, if they're not keeping the Torah, you don't partake, you don't be friend with that person, you set yourself apart. Okay, so that's what this is telling you, but it's really referring to stranger. You don't treat any strangers badly. That if you were back in your own land, you know, keeping the Torah, when a stranger come, as long they attach themselves to the children of Yashar'el, to the Elohim of the children of Yashar'el, you know, they become one like you. They will be circumcised, definitely have to be circumcised. All the law, they have to keep it. Therefore, you don't treat them bad. You love them as you love yourself. Understand? So verse 22, you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless children. You know, verse 23, if you afflict them in any way and they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry. Verse 24, and my wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. You, your wives shall be widows, and your children shall be fatherless. I think this is self-explanatory. You do not afflict a widow or a fatherless child. Okay, so that's probably basically whoever you are, whether the government or not, you do not afflict any widows, because if they cry out to the Elohim of heaven, he will make sure that your wives is a widow and your children fatherless, because he will kill you. Or if it's vice versa, a woman, if you're putting affliction on a widow or children, then he will kill you and make your husband a widow and your child motherless, what have you. Okay, verse 25, and it reads, if you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like what a money lender to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's garment as a pledge, you shall return it to him before sun goes down. So I think this is self-explanatory. So in other words, an Israelite like yourself, you know, if you lend money to Israelite like yourself, you know you're not supposed to charge them with interest. And again, modern day, you're in the land of captivity. Of course, you know they're gonna charge you interest because they don't keep the Torah, they don't keep the law. But you know you're not supposed to charge your brother. Let's say your brother, or natural brother, sister, or cousin, what have you, or even someone the descendant of Yashar'el, borrow some money from you. You do not add interest to it, and you don't take that person garment or whatever they need on a daily basis. You usually take it away from them or seize it because of the money that they owed you. This is simply what this is saying to you here, and that, like I said, this is basic, is very understandable. If you don't understand that, it's always good, you pray to the Father to give you wisdom to understand what has been said here. But like I say, it's very basics, very clear, and to understand. And verse 27, for that it is only this covering, it is the garment of his skin, what will he sleep in, and it will be at that when he cries to me, I will hear, and I am grateful, I am gracious. So you don't do that to your brothers or sisters who are poorer than yourselves. If you wealthy, actually, the poor, Elohim knows them. But according to Deuteronomy, if you keep the commandments, laws, and statutes, he will bless you with everything that you need. You will not lack. You have to borrow. You'll be above and not beneath. That's the law. That's the commandments, laws, and statutes. If you're keeping it, that's what is going to be happening to you. But at the same time, you still find poor among yourselves. So if you say you're blessed, you have your own business, you're not lack of anything, you have enough money to lend to people. If somebody who's poor and you come to you and ask you to lend you some money, you don't double charge 25, 50, 15% interest, or they have to pay you double. You just borrow them $10, for instance, and they just at certain such time they're gonna give you the $10 back, but you don't go, they don't give you the $10, you go see something that they have, that they're gonna need because they're already poor. He doesn't want you to do that. You love your neighbor as yourself, so you want the $10. When they return it to you, they return it to you. You know what I'm saying? So that's what he's really saying here, because if that person cries out to Elohim, he is a gracious Elohim. He will not be happy with you. Do not take that person, the things that he needs. Let's say, you seize the car. He needs it to get to work, what have you. So it's just an example. It's just, you read between the line, it's very simple and basics, like I said. And verse 28, you shall not revile God, nor cursed a ruler of your people. Okay, so this is dealing with presidents, what have you, that they have here, or whoever's ruling, against you. You do not talk against that president, what have you, or curse the ruler of your people that is over you. I think this is very simple. You beware so you don't get into politics regardless, because politics have nothing to do with the commandments, laws, and statutes. Government has nothing to do with the law and statutes. So you steer away from that and watch what comes out of your mouth. Like I say, it's the Torah is the law. That's why you have to make sure you read the Torah daily. Make it your business. Every time you're praying, trying to read one chapter at a time and ask YAHUAH to let you to understand these things. And verse 29, it says, you shall not delay to offer your first of your rib produce and your juices, and the firstborn of your son you shall give it to me. Now that has to do with the feast of the Passover. Now we're gonna get to it, since the second part of the commandments. That's was doing the Levites when they were priesthood. Remember, you have to give your first. Remember, they're the one who received the tithe. It is there for their services. So the tithes and offering goes to the Levites because they have no inheritance with the land, with the promised land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Yaakov and his seeds. Which means the Levites were the only one. The inheritance is the Most High. So therefore, the 10% was only reserved for them only, solely the Levites in the offering. So meaning, every 10th of your herds, your crops, you have to take it to the Levites. Now, since the people of Yashar'el are scattered to the four corners of the earth, and whether the rest of them remains in Africa, we have no idea where the Levites are. But if you know Levites for sure, it's your duty to give them the 10%. You owe him that, because this is what they're supposed to get forever. It's an everlasting command by the Elohim of heaven that you're supposed to give them the 10%. And what says, your firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. So when you have your firstborn of your son, you will replace that, give a sheep or goat for that son to the priest, and they will not sacrifice your son. It's unacceptable. But since your firstborn, you're gonna give a sheep or a goat. We're gonna get further to it, but since, like I said, the Levites are no longer doing sacrifices for sins, because this is why the Messiah came and died for us, for the sin. This is the only covenant new covenant that he brought to die for our sins, that we no longer, have to offer a goat or sheep, okay, for that. So that wasn't the time when the Levites were still doing that, before the Messiah came. So therefore, you will not be doing that. But like I said, if a Levites for sure, they from the tribe of Levites, you can still offer them that 10% tithe. It's for them alone. No one else except the Levites receive the 10% tithing. Okay, the 10% tithing. And verse 30, it says, likewise you shall do with your oxen and with your sheep. It shall be with its mother 7 days, and on the 8th days that you shall give it to me. Again, that has to do with the feast of the Passover, which the first feast of the year we're supposed to celebrate, that covers you throughout the year. But I'm not going to get into that, but that's what it is referring to in verse 30. In verse 31, it says, you shall be holy men to me. You shall not eat meat torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. Let's say you have a sheep and one of the fox or came and killed that sheep. You know, you find the rest of the meat on the floor. You should not eat that meat because it's not good. It's not clean. It's unclean. So you give it to your dogs. You do not eat it. You throw it away. That's what it is saying. If you have your goats and you woke up in the morning, you find it was killed by an animal or something happened to it, you do not eat that animal. You throw it away. Okay, so this is all is just telling you here, like I said, plain and simple. You know, do not kill an animal that was killed by another animal. All right, if it was torn, you do not take the leftover and go eat it, or you throw it to the dogs, let the dogs eat it. So now in chapter 23, I think we're going to stop at verse 14 actually, because we're not reading the whole thing. The rest has to do that's not the commandments really, about 14. So we're going to read 1 to 14, and it's about justice for all. That's what the title says. But that's Exodus chapter 23, and it reads, "You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hands with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." So everybody knows that, again, you are in the land of captivities, or whether you children of Yashar'el or not, but if you attach yourself to Elohim above, your Father in heaven, you're keeping the Torah, you know you're not supposed to lie. This is the part to say, thou shalt not lie, a false witness, thou shalt not lie. That's why I said the 10 Commandments is in details as you go through the whole book of the Torah. So you should not circulate a false report. Things you did not see, you do not speak, unless you've seen with your eyes, or you do not say you saw something when you didn't see it, or lie whatsoever. That's breaking the Torah. You shall not lie. Okay, this is very simple. If they call you to justice, they ask you, did you see so-and-so did this? You didn't see it. No, sir or ma'am, I did not see that, and I cannot witness to that. Even if they were paying you $1 million to say you saw it, you do not take that money, because you're breaking the Torah, and you'll pay dearly for that. Because that's the Torah. You're not supposed to do that. That's why you teach it to your children, do not lie. And you don't beat up your children till not lying. And yes, you lying as well, because remember, your children is learning from you. So if you don't follow the Torah righteously, they're not going to follow it, And some children will call you out, for your hypocrisy. So make sure you remember to teach your children, and make sure you do not be a false report. You do not be a false witness. You do not lie. Okay? 10 Commandments. And verse 2, it says, you shall not follow a crowd to do evil. What is evil? Anyone who are not keeping the Torah, the commandments, the laws, and statutes. You don't have to kill somebody to be evil. When you're lying, you're evil. When you commit an adultery, you're evil. Because it's opposite of what you're supposed to be. It's against the Torah of Elohim. So you do not follow a crowd that are doing evil, or bestiality, homosexuality, all that kind of thief. That's why I say it's best that you're trying to own your own business, so you know what you're doing, what you're coming in and coming out. Because if you go work for a company and that company is, stealing from people or doing people wrong, if you work for that company, you're partaking in that wickedness. So you do not follow that crowd. So you make sure you're trying to do something that you are in control, not what you're working with someone who you have no control of. Okay, I know it's probably hard for some of you. Probably say, well, what do I do? So you have to figure it out. Go to Elohim and pray to him. Ask him what you do. There are several things you can do for yourself. Be a business owner nowadays. You can work on, do things online. Open your own little things. Figure it out. But if you're serving Elohim, you have to walk righteously before him. There's no if and but about it. No excuse about it. No ignorance about it. Okay, so it says here, you shall not testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. Okay, you shall not show partiality to a poor man in a dispute. So if the poor man is guilty, he is guilty. If the rich man is guilty, he is guilty. Okay, you give them the judgment that they deserve, not because he's rich or poor. Don't feel bad because he's poor. If he stole something, the punishment, whatever the punishment is, he has to pay for it. If he's rich, he stole something. Rich is still stole. Don't think because the person have money, still a lot of them do their money, wickedly. They stolen from people to get where they are. They being unrighteous to get where they are. So, okay, you have to understand that. So this is what it's just basically telling you. You don't do partiality. If you're chosen, like I say, it's best you do not work. You are in the world, but not of the world. So you do things where you have control of. If you were to be a judge, they bring a case to you just because the person paid you on the side, or he's your best friend, you're going to try to let it slide. That's a no-no. You don't let things slide because somebody's your friend or because you feel bad for the poor. Whatever the person done, the justice is supposed to be served accordingly. It's supposed to be judged accordingly. So verse 4, it says, if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkeys going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him again. Verse 5, if you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. Remember, you love your brothers as yourself. Now, when it says by enemies, I'm not saying that it's not saying, not me, then that if somebody hates you, you're going to sit and eat and drink with that person. It's just saying that even though that person hates you, if you see they need help, they carrying the burden, it's too heavy, you can offer your help. If it's up to them, they want to take it, they take it, but not to say that you're going to sit with them, go home and be, buddy, positive, you hang out with that person. No, that's not what it says. But it says, if I see you carrying a burden and it's too much for you, it's okay to give that person a helping hand and go about your business after that. Okay? And verse 6, it says, you shall not pervert the judgment of the poor in a dispute. We read that already. Verse 7, it says, keep yourself far from a false matter. Okay? This is very simple, very basics. Anything that that is not true, that is not, it is a lie or not correct, you stay away from it. He said, you do not kill the innocent in righteousness. Okay, so a lot of people sometimes when they be false witness, it cause a lot of people to lose their life because they lie. They even pay them to lie, or somebody have something on them, they end up lying. They do that a lot in the court judicial system, especially in America. And like I said, those attorneys, they were trained to do wickedly. They were trained to represent wickedness. So it's a whole kind of mess, steer away from that. Certain career you cannot practice because you're not going to be able to practice it in accordance with the Torah. Okay? So you have to make sure you do something that you are in control, where you can practice the Torah accordingly. Okay? And it says, do not kill an innocent person. He said, for I will not justify the wicked. And you know that the Elohim above will not justify the wicked. You do wicked, you pay for the wickedness. Okay? Verse 8, it says, and you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning of the perverts of the words of the righteous. So it's true, once you start taking money and people start bribing you, you cannot do justice properly because somebody already bribed you to give you money. If you take the money, then you're going to have to be on the side of the wicked, and you cannot do that. Okay? And verse 9, it says, also you shall not oppress a stranger. We've been to that already. For you know the heart of a stranger, because you were a stranger in the land of Mizraim. So we've done to that. Now the law of the Shabbat, you're going to see that a lot, the Shabbat in the feast. Okay? So you're going to see it in most of the rest of the commandments that we're going to go to. Verse 10, it says, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather it in its produce. Verse 11, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie down. Now this Shabbat is for the land. Okay, it's not for you that you work 6 days. Still 6 days you work, and the 7th day is a day, it's a holiday for the Elohim. You do not work. But this also goes for your land as well. For 6 years you'll sow, you'll till, you toil, whatever, but on the 7th year you give the land a rest. Okay, and it said that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beast of the field may eat. And like manner you shall do with your vineyard and your olive grove. And I know in America, people do not go to people's yard and eat, but if you in America, you have a farm, you decide you want to give out free what have you, your fruits, whatever, you farmed, you want to share it and open it, to give to the poor, you can do that as well. Because since, private property, you do not go in there. And like I said, a lot of the law, they don't practice in modern day or some states. And some states will forbid you to give the poor anything, unless they approve it. So use discretion in the sermon, like I say, however you see fit. But on the seventh year, you don't touch that fruit. You leave it for the beasts or your neighbor, whoever is in hunger, or you want to give it to the poor. That's what you do with that. Okay. And again, verse 12, it says, 6 days you shall do your work. And this is the Shabbat for you. The first one was for the land, and this is for you. 6 days you shall do your work, and on the seventh day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the sons and the daughters, your servants and your strangers that may be refreshed. So and that goes, right now we don't mostly use donkeys to travels like they used to back in the days, or horses, but you have a car. So your car will rest. You will rest. Your daughters, if you have maids, I know you don't rarely find maids in America because we learn to do everything ourselves. But it depends on the country you are. In Africa, there you can hire a maid, you can afford one. Therefore, when you take your days of rest, your maids will not be working that day. You give them that day off to send them home, what have you. So this is all it's saying. So if you work 6 days, I'm not going to the part where the calendar, which I already have on YouTube on my site, so you can look up the calendar, see how to find your Shabbat, your Sabbath or Sabbath, for you to follow it. But 6 days you work, and if you own a business, you close your door on the seventh day. You do not open. None of your workers should be working for you. Don't say that you're gonna be at home resting and your workers are still at work. That's a no-no. When you close 7 day, everybody from your job who's working under you, for you, what have you, they take the day off as well, and you start new on the next day, which will be your first day. Understand? And like I say, your sons, your daughters, and again, I have it in my YouTube channel, how you follow the Shabbat, how you observe it. And like I said, as we read along, we're going to keep going through those things so you can understand. And verse 13, it says, and in all that I have said to you, be circumspect to make no mention of the name of other gods, nor let it be heard from your mouth. This is what I was saying earlier in Exodus chapter 23, verse 13. You do not let any other name of Elohim comes out of your mouth. Okay, so I think I've said enough. And like I said, this is most of them is basics. Use discernment, and discretions as well. Remember, the world rejects the commandments, laws, and statutes. It was not taught to you. So that's why you have to seek YAHUAH. Sunini Nanini, forgive me, because it's just new things for me. Or the Most High, seek the Most High. I'm going to use the Most High, so he can pour into you wisdom and understanding. So like I say, study, pray, and seek him. And read these Torahs daily. When the morning prayers, make some times to read it and teach it to your children. And like I say, a lot of things, we have to really separate ourselves from this world, because the world is not, it's a lot of things going on that you do not want to partake. You set yourself apart. You don't want to get caught up in these things. You have to be very careful. Again, use discretion in the sermon and seek YAHUAH while he may be found, because he's coming as a thief in the night. No one knows the time he's going to show up. Just like the days of Noah, they didn't know the flood was going to come suddenly upon them until they see that it's happening, and they're trying to beat on the door to get in, but they couldn't get in. So with that, I will say shalom. May Sunini Nanini, the Most High, bless you, keep you, and guard you. May he give you the zeal for the secret of the Torah. May he open your eyes that you can see and teach these things to your children. Learn it, breathe it, sleep with it. Whatever you're doing, trying to remember the commandments and keep it. So with that, I will say shalom.